meeting to order. Please stand for our pledge. Thank you, everyone. At this time, Ms. Evans, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Francis.
Here.
Mr. Henderson.
Present.
Ms. Ionetti.
Here.
Dr. Levinowitz.
Present.
Mr. Brodsky.
Present.
Ms. Sherpier. Present. Mr. Sirota.
Here.
Mr. Wallet.
Here.
Dr. Higgins. Present. All present. Thank you. Thank you. At this time, again, we welcome you to our board meeting for this evening. Before we begin tonight, I just wanted to make a statement regarding everything that our community has been dealing with since September 1st. I know personally, living near the Joel Drive area, every day we're reminded, I wake up early in the morning and you hear, all the work that's going on. And I was actually out of town when we got a call from our neighbor that the tornado had come through. And I look out, they sent us pictures and, I could see our neighbor behind us that, their roof was gone. And it's been just such a difficult time to, just support each other and, help them. What has been most exciting for me is the fact that this Upper Dublin community is absolutely amazing. We would be outside working and people would just stop by and, ask if they could help, or, people would say, can I bring you food? And I know that everywhere around this community, people have really been there for one another. And although this was a devastating experience, it also reminded us what is so awesome about Upper Dublin and how proud so many of us are to live here. Because we know we'll build back. My neighbor behind us lost their home. And I look at that roof every day, and we stay inside to make sure everybody's okay. But it's been a tough time. This administration has been absolutely incredible. The teachers, the staff, working together to make sure that tomorrow our Fort Washington Elementary students can actually be back in school. And then in another week, that our high school students will be back in school. This is about everyone working together, everyone picking up where someone else, really just, kind of can't get it together. At times it's like, all the appointments that you have with people coming in and the insurance and all of that. It's a lot. But we're in this together. We're going to build back everything, and hopefully it's going to be better than ever. And this community has just stepped forward in a way that we can only just say thank you. On behalf of the board, I know Dr. Donnie has been, sending out messages, and, he is part of our team of 10, so he speaks for us. But we just want to thank everyone in this community for what they have done to help those that are still going through so much, and it's going to take a long time for them to get back on their feet. But on behalf of the board, we just want to say thank you to this entire community for all you've done, all you're doing, and I know what you're going to continue to do to support our families. So with that said, we're going to keep moving along and ask our Student Government Association report. There she is. Welcome to your first legislative meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. The September 1st with a great load of anticipation and excitement for this new school year. With orientation and games for our underclassmen, the big beginning to their high school experience was hopefully one to remember. Unfortunately, however, another adverse event paused our year only after a single day. The storm that paved its path through our township caused extreme damage to both our buildings and school year, but it has yet to catch up to our ambition and aspiration for recovery. What we believed would hold us back has actually brought us together to strive for a union among our students and community even outside of the township. Neighboring districts such as Springfield and Wissahickon have been kind enough to accommodate our many student athletes with a location to practice. The rising school spirit can even be sensed by our large crowds who make it out to our away football games. Our teachers and staff have all been assiduously persevering through the past 2 weeks with virtual classes. We appreciate all of our teachers who worked tirelessly to seamlessly continue our education. In terms of recovery, our field hockey team has already started practicing on Sparks Field, and the high school building is on track to return in-person instruction by the 27th. Counting down the days of returning back to our friends and greatly anticipated school year, we hope everyone stays safe and #UD strong. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Young, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that report, and we look forward to having all of our kids back in our schools soon as well. So tomorrow, our Fort Washington students will be welcomed to Jarrettstown Elementary, Maple Glen Elementary, and Thomas Fitz Elementary. And if you saw when you drove in tonight, we have banners outside each of our schools welcoming the Fort Washington Elementary School students and families. Each building is doing any number of things to welcome the staff and students. And I have to say, it has been, my new word is Herculean. It's been a Herculean effort to get everything out of Fort Washington that could be salvaged and into buildings. And the flexibility that our staff has shown is second only to their professionalism. We've had to make a number of changes, asking special area teachers not to teach in their classrooms, but to push into classrooms. We've asked dozens of teachers to move out of their rooms and buildings and move into other spaces. And on Friday, we had an all hands on deck event where teachers from across the district and staff from across the district descended upon our 3 elementary schools to help teachers set up their rooms. And it was amazing to see a room with 40 boxes in it 2 hours later to be perfectly set up, ready to welcome students. So we are infinitely grateful to everyone for all of the efforts over the last couple of days and the flexibility and professionalism that we know will continue as we enter our new normal. I want to let everyone know that we have been mindful of our health and safety plan as we relocated grade levels into our buildings. So some people have said, how in the world are you going to keep students and staff safe if you're adding this many more students to buildings? The amount of time that we're serving lunch, the amount of time that we're outside for recess, all of those processes are longer. So I want to thank our administrative team and our principals for reconfiguring all of their building schedules. I'll be up at 4 a.m. worrying about transportation tomorrow, so if anyone wants to text or call, feel free to do that. Tomorrow, we will do our best with transportation. But I'm excited because we could feel the UD spirit in our buildings as staff are getting ready. The high school is set. We are clear to open next Monday. The building has been tested. The air quality has been tested. We're good to go. All the life safety systems are being commissioned and tested. And I have to tell you that the morning after the tornado, I don't think anybody, I know I certainly didn't think that we would be at this meeting talking about getting kids back in school as quickly as we've done. So kudos to everyone for helping with that. Tonight I'm asking the board to approve the emergency instructional time template. When we had to pivot to virtual learning for both Upper Upland High School and Fort Washington Elementary, we reached out to the Pennsylvania Department of Education to make sure that we had approval to do so. And they've asked for us to submit this instructional time template. This allows us to meet the minimum number of days and hours through in-person instruction, remote instruction, and virtual learning. You'll see on that document, it references COVID-19 because this document actually came into existence as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. But what this will do, it will allow us to be able to use the days that we've been virtual to count towards our school days. You know that we proactively plan in our calendar 3 emergency/inclement weather days. So we've used 2 of those so far. So we'll talk about how we'll be doing snow makeup days and whatnot once we get a little bit further into the fall and we start to hit winter. I want to let everyone know that this will probably be our last meeting in this building because the high school is set to reopen next week. Our meetings in October will most likely be back at Upper Upland High School. And I'd like to personally thank the countless number of community members who have assisted our students, our staff, and everyone to get us back on track for in-person learning. As Dr. Davis said, the level of assistance that everyone in the community has provided has really been nothing short of amazing. So I do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and from our entire leadership team. Thank you all for everything that's been done.
Thank you, Dr. Donovan. At this time, I'm going to allow you to continue as you present your goals for the school year, 2021-22.
Every year, the superintendent of schools and the board must come to agreement on a set of goals. And we worked throughout the summer and got some feedback on my goals. And what I'd like to do is walk the board through my goals for this school year. This is also some coherent setting for the community that is here tonight and also that's listening to see where our focus areas are as we move through this school year. So Ms. Evans, if you can go to the next slide. What we do around goals is very intentional. So we have a comprehensive plan, and a set of strategic action plans. And that's really where we derive our district and superintendent goals. From there, we create our leadership team goals. From there, we create our building and department goals, individual staff goals, and student goals. That means we're all working in alignment towards the same end, towards the same goals. That allows us to have a common language around district initiatives and district focus areas, and it will also allow us to better articulate our progress toward the goals that we're working on. I'll make sure that this presentation is available on the website tomorrow because I know it's a little bit hard to see. The first goal is comprehensive planning. So this says the superintendent shall audit the current strategic action plans and facilitate the development of the district's successor comprehensive plan and strategic action plans for school years 2022 through 2024-2025. So a couple of years ago, the Department of Education took the strategic planning process, they renamed it comprehensive planning, and they really took the meat out of it. So we have a master document that we will do for compliance purposes with the state. And that will allow us to articulate some broad-based goals. From there, we will actually do what we did several years ago, where we take that plan and we create a series of strategic action plans that help us operationalize our comprehensive plan. So you've heard our leadership talk about some of the goals that we have. Ensuring ensuring that 100% of students by the end of grade 3 are rated on or above grade level. Ensuring that 100% of our 7th graders are demonstrating at least proficiency in math by the end of 7th grade and writing by the end of 8th grade. Without having those goals articulated and without everyone knowing what those goals are, the likelihood of getting there is really difficult. But our teachers, our staff, our board, our administrators know that those are the goals that we've laid out. I will let everyone know that in the next couple of weeks, there will be a call for volunteers for anyone that wants to be part of our strategic planning process. Several years ago, we had approximately 65 community members work with us on our strategic action plans. And so we're hoping for the same type of turnout, because what it does, it adds a richness to the planning process. Next up, we have the area of teaching and learning. The superintendent shall implement instructional models based on meeting the needs of all students with a focus on equitable practices. I'm going to take this a few words at a time. No one instructional model works for all kids and is appropriate for all grade levels. So we want to make sure that we are flexible and nimble with our instructional models to make sure that we're doing all that we can to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our kids. This is where we need to be flexible, because we're not preparing kids for the education that we have or that their older brothers or sisters, cousins, and family members had even 5 years ago. With the acceleration of technology, with making sure that we are preparing kids for success not only when they're with us in our K-12 walls, but beyond our K-12 walls, we have to make sure that our staff is highly trained, highly competent, highly qualified, so that we create successful structures for kids. That takes a really, or it comes in the form of trying to balance the desire for some people to feel comfortable with creating an urgency for change. And so one of the silver linings, we're always trying to look for silver linings. One of the silver linings of the COVID-19 pandemic was the acceleration of technology. The ease at which people now are using technology, not as a replacement for instruction, but an enhancement to instruction. When we talk about equitable practices, I want to be very clear about what I mean around equitable practices. Equitable practices are what it takes to make sure that every student can be successful. That's all it means. So if that means kids need extra time in courses, that's an equitable practice. If it means some kids don't need to sit in a course for 180 days to demonstrate mastery, that's what it means. It means creating building schedules that are flexible so that we can provide support for students during the school day, as we've done with Sandy Run and as we're doing now in the preparation of the new high school schedule. It means that all kids have access to enrichment and remediation when they need it. And it means taking a look at all of the data that we have about kids, not just PSSA and Keystone data, but local assessment data, and saying what's working in our curriculum, what's not working in our curriculum, and what needs to be changed so that we can help kids to be successful. It also means that we have to deploy our staff strategically. So there are years that Fort Washington Elementary School, for example, is a Title I school. There are years that it is not a Title I school. There are peaks and valleys that we see in performance of buildings. It's really incumbent upon us to make sure that we find out what the root causes of issues are, and then not just find out what the root causes are and correct those, but really focus on capitalizing on our strengths. Social emotional programming is another needs to be a continued big area of focus. This year we're implementing Mind Up for Life at the K-5 level, and we're currently in the process of identifying some social emotional programming for grades 6 through 12. Again, we talked about taking a look at the schedules that support students. So making sure that we have time during the day for extended learning, making sure that we have time for teachers and students to work together when that's needed. And then also working through our equity audit. And again, I want to be clear when we talk about the equity audit. The purpose of doing the equity audit is to see how we are truly meeting the needs of all kids. Are there kids that need more support? Are there kids that need less support? Are there things that we need to do differently inside of our curriculum to make sure that kids get the success or reach the level of success that we know that they can reach? We talked about blended learning and universal design for learning, making sure that we're accelerating all kids when it's appropriate to accelerate them. So many times in schools we talk about remediation, but we also need to really focus on acceleration. Not grade level or course acceleration, but acceleration by learning topic. When kids already have a basic understanding of content that we're teaching them, how do we accelerate that? We're going to continue working in our Equity and Empowerment Steering Committee bi-monthly, and we're going to make it much more overt what work is coming out as a result of that. And we'll also be having at least one town hall on teaching and learning topics. So the community should look for some information. I anticipate we will probably do a town hall either late autumn or early winter. There's a budget and finance goal. So looking at the district's finances and making sure that we support the instructional and operational needs of the district and our student, staff, and facilities while also being mindful of the community's needs. So at the most recent Finance Committee meeting, we talked about the Act 1 index being 3.4%. And one of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is kept our tax increase below the Act 1 index. And Mr. Leckman and I will be recommending to the board to do the opt-out resolution in a couple weeks so that we can find ourselves to tax increase that's no greater than the Act 1 index. But obviously, because we're doing needs-based budgeting, if we can bring in a budget below that, we certainly will. We feel confident that we'll be able to do that. The implementation of a budget is really as critical as the development of it. Right now, we're already getting into the development process of next year's budget, while simultaneously looking at how we're living inside this budget. We did some emergency work over the summer to make sure that our emergency response plans were up to date. And the community should also expect at least one town hall on the district's finances and operations. There's also a human resources and labor relation goal. So we have a number of labor groups. We have our teachers, the largest labor group, Upper Dublin Education Association. We have our support staff association, Upper Dublin Educational Support Association, UDSD. And we have the Act 93 agreement, and then we have a number of folks that are on independent contracts. For example, Ms. Kitten, our Director of Human Resources, Mr. Leckman, our Chief Financial Officer, and me, we're on individual contracts. But working with these labor groups to make sure that we maintain collaborative relationships. One of the things that I've heard from time to time is that perhaps administration and our associations are too comfortable with one another. And for folks that might think that, I would love to be able to invite you to one of our monthly meetings, because I can tell you that there are, let's say, robust conversations happen behind closed doors. But because we're in a civil environment, when we emerge from those rooms where we have robust conversations, everyone is polite and professional. There are definitely times where we have strong disagreements, but there are also many, many more times where we're able to find common ground. The state has re-implemented the teacher evaluation system this year, so Act 13 of 2020. And one of the big things is supporting the board in their negotiations of a successor agreement for our support staff association. There's also a school board relations goal. So the board has something called the Principles of Governance and Leadership. We are a team of 10. So sustain ongoing communication with the board, engage in regular meetings with the board leadership. So Dr. Davis, Mr. Wallach, and I, we meet periodically. Working with the board to understand the complexities of the superintendent position. I don't know, I think after a pandemic and a tornado, I'm not even sure that I knew the complexities of the superintendent position, but we're getting there. Scheduling some retreats for the board, and for those folks that might be listening, a retreat is a fancy word for saying a meeting, typically on a Saturday, but we talk about how to function as a board. I don't want anyone to think we're going to some great location. And then we know that we're going to have new school board directors. It's possible anytime, but in an election year, there's a guarantee of new school directors. So working to onboard new school board directors, because when new school board directors sit in December, some important decisions have to be made around the preliminary budget and whatnot. So making sure that their transition is very smooth. And finally, there's a professionalism and professional growth goal. So I sit on a number of committees, both locally and across the state. So I'm a member of the 21st Century Cyber Charter School Board, and also a member of PASS's Board of Governors, which is our professional superintendent organization. The board should expect that I maintain my Act 45 compliance, that's my continuing education. Remaining active in the district community, sustain communication structures with the community, and also lead the mitigation efforts that were required not only by the COVID-19 pandemic, but also by our recent tornado event. And then obviously advocate for additional state and federal funding and charter school reforms. And before people jump on the idea of advocating for charter school reform, let me be very clear that the charter school law was written in 1996. If parents want to send their kids to cyber charter school, they absolutely have that right. We're not here to knock or denigrate cyber charter schools in any way. But just as we have worked to get some better ways of funding the basic education subsidy, charter school funding is still out there as a political hot potato because it hasn't been really looked at and revised since 1996. So I don't want anyone to think that that goal is me out there trying to shut down cyber charter schools. Long story short, those are my goals for the year. These goals will be on the October legislative meeting for approval. I wanted to walk the board through them this evening, following some initial feedback that we got, and I'm happy to take any questions that any board members may have.
Are there any questions from the board? I know that we've had an opportunity to see some of these previously, and people have given individual feedback, but are there any additional questions tonight?
I just wanted to thank the superintendent for all the time it takes and to work with leadership to put these goals together. And I do appreciate too the opening statement for each goal. Each word is carefully crafted. And you have to read it very slowly to really understand the full breadth of what you're saying. And transparency is excellent. And each year at the end of the school year, the board does do an evaluation. And there's a statement that's posted on our website about the results of that evaluation. So I just job well done, and really appreciate the time and effort it takes to put this together.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I just wanted to comment how often equity came up while you were talking, and that just really makes me happy. It's sprinkled throughout the whole thing, and I really believe that you're trying to make this as equitable as it can be. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is very helpful for all of us, and it will take some time to digest. Is this a time also where you can ask some questions about some of the things that I mentioned, or is that for? All right, so in teaching, learning, and service delivery, you mentioned PVAS and e-metrics. I think I have a pretty decent idea what that involves, but maybe for other people on the board and in the audience, it might be helpful to explain a little bit what that contains. It's slide number 4.
Sure, thank you. So PVAS and e-metric. PVAS is Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment. So when students take the PSSAs and they take the Keystones, over time, PVAS gets populated, and it's a predictor of how students will do on future assessments. The data generally is pretty helpful. We're not sure how helpful it's going to be because there's been an interruption in the state assessments, but we'll still consider the PVAS data to look to see what students might need some acceleration and what students might need some remediation as well. E-metric allows us to look at a granular level how students did by standard and by eligible content on state assessment so that we can go back into our curriculum and see, are we missing something? Does something need to be strengthened? Does something need to be spiraled? So those are 2 tools that we use sort of behind the scenes to guide our work with kids.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then I think in slide number 10, it seems to me that you're being pretty modest in terms of your professionalism and professional growth. I think you're involved in a lot of activities that are not that are education related, either in terms of training other teachers or meeting with other superintendents, and there's a host of other things that's probably not listed here. But I think we're incredibly grateful for all that work because it certainly puts Upper Dublin on the map, so to speak.
Thank you.
With that said, can you explain a little bit better or a little more your involvement with the charter school and then how that links to the last one of the funding and the reforms for the charter school?
Sure. So the 21st Century Cyber Charter School was a cyber charter that was developed by superintendents that saw the need for high-quality cyber education, and there are superintendents from Bucks County, Montgomery County, Chester County, and I'm looking at Mr. Patel because he was there, Delaware County as well. That's where we stole Mr. Patel from. That was before I was on the board, so I don't want anyone to need to be on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow. But really, my role as a board member there is to provide governance oversight. Much like you all provide governance oversight for our district, I am part of a team of board members that provides governance to the Cyber Charter School. Around the need for cyber charter reform, funding reform, and some other reforms, I get to see behind the curtain in my role as a board member. I get to see what it actually costs to educate those students, what's charged from districts, and in some cases, believe it or not, it costs a lot less to educate kids there than it would in the district. But there are a number of students at 21st Century that have a number of services where the cost or the funds that come from the district don't cover all of the costs that the cyber charter school has. And so it's been interesting to see both sides of that coin. It's really through my work there that I see firsthand the need for that law that was written in 1996 to be rewritten, because many times the funding that goes is more than what it costs to educate, but there are a number of students where they're not getting enough funding from an individual district to cover the cost of what it costs to educate a student.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment. Look, Dr. Yanni, you graduated last year from a national certification program. Can you briefly describe, it was in your goal last year, but it's not mentioned because you completed the program, but I think it's valuable to just remind the board and the community what you experienced.
Sure. So through the American Association of School Administrators, AASA, I participated in a program, the National Superintendent Certification Program. So I'm certified in all 50 states and the territory of Guam. So if I don't show up one of these days, I might be running a school in Guam. So it'd be a heck of a commute, but what can I say?
Dr. Yanni, I know you and your team have been doing an amazing job to get our students in Fort Washington and high school back into in-person learning as soon as possible. You've done a very good job with the team communicating with the community. But on slide 7, you talk about highlight the budget and finance goal. And if you can, to a certain extent, share with the community some of the steps that you and your team are taking to return our students to school as quickly as possible, but in a financially responsible manner.
So right now, almost all of the costs that we're incurring will be covered by our insurance carrier. That does not mean that we are being, not cognizant of the money that we're spending. So we meet daily with our insurance carrier. We have folks on site to make sure that we're doing things in a prudent way. A lot of the costs are the physical structures of the schools. Roofing, air handlers, doing any number of repairs. So I would anticipate in the next couple of months, we'll be coming to the board with, lists of everything that has been done along with the costs that are associated. I think the thing that is more of a soft cost is the time it's taken, right? So I think, you think of a typical week. I think last week the team and I, at one point, we didn't know what day it was, and we're not complaining, right? But it's just, it was a whirlwind. The event happened. We didn't think we were going to be able to get kids back for some time. All of a sudden, the plan came together, and then it's been full steam ahead to make it work. So if it all works really well, it was all my idea. And if it doesn't work, if there's any problems, it's because the ELT didn't plan well enough. Meredith Penner, that's P-E-N-N-E-R.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Dr. Yanni.
Thank you all.
I really do appreciate you sharing your goals with us and with the community, and we look forward to the updates that you will send us throughout the year. At this time, we are at the opportunity for our first community input. If you would like to speak, please come to the mic, state your name and where you are from in the community. And Ms. Evans will be our timekeeper for your 4 minutes.
University of Fort Washington.
You can speak into the mic.
Sorry, I have really hard time hearing you. University of Fort Washington. Hold on.
Thank you. Anita Brister, Fort Washington. So basically, I'm going to ad lib here on the goals because I do like to get things ahead of time, but I just have to wing it. But that's okay. This one I formulated before I even came here tonight. Having the 3rd grade reading, I'm just going to start with that one. I know that was a goal last year, maybe even the first year that you got here, and obviously it's probably the most essential goal. The previous superintendent did not have that as a goal, because if you can't read, you're going to have a real difficult time in middle school and high school. So I'm just wondering if you can give us a little bit of describe the progress that's been made in that, or maybe let us know. I mean, I'd like to think that hardly anybody can't read at grade level by the end of 3rd grade, but I could be completely wrong. It's been a long time since I had a 3rd grader. So if there's been progress made, what percent are still struggling at the end of 3rd grade, and what are we doing for them? I hope we're getting them the appropriate help that they need. And then I'm going totally out of order. I guess maybe I'll start with the budget and finance. So first of all, thrilled to know, and I kind of expected it, or hoped for it, that you, Dr. Yanni, and Mr. Leckman would certainly be, you're pretty confident that we would be below that 3.4% Act 1 index. That is a very high number compared to what we've had in recent past. And I'm certainly going to put out there now, and it won't surprise anybody who knows me, that not only would I hope it's going to be not above 3.4%, but I hope it's going to be well below 3.4%. For years we were told, all these properties that all this development is going to bring in money, and it is starting to bring in money. So there's no reason at all why we should even be entertaining anything in the 3% range. It should be well under. And I do realize it's early, so you can't commit to everything. I'm really happy that there'll be at least one budget town hall from Budget and Finance. Really happy that there'll be at least one town hall on teaching and learning. Question that I don't know, because I have kids, but they're adults, thank God. And Keystones, did we have Keystones last year? I know some tests we didn't have, but I thought we did have Keystones, so if we did, when would they be presented? And this is just a pet peeve of mine that I think ties in somewhere, I don't know where. But I want to know where we stand with the curriculum review process. When I was a lot younger and had my kids here, and as some of you know, I was on the board in the dark ages a long time ago. But one of the things I thought was phenomenal about Upper Dublin was how this district did the curriculum review process. And there were superintendents I didn't even like, but they did. I give those superintendents credit for leading the way on curriculum review. And I do know that it's just disappeared, or at least we're not seeing, I'm going to be honest here, we did not see a curriculum review the whole time Dr. Wheeler was here. That's a long time to just, I don't know what happened to the process, but for those who maybe aren't aware, usually in this district, it started with identifying strengths and weaknesses, because you sure don't want to throw out the good things about your curriculum. You want to improve on your curriculum. So parents would have, there'd be surveys for parents, what do you like about middle school math? What don't you like about it? How could we improve? There would be surveys for teachers. It was a long process, but we went through every single aspect of the curriculum. My time is up. Okay, so I just want to know, is that coming back? And if so, when will we start seeing those curriculum reviews presented here at board meetings? Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Brewster. Are there any others for public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close this first opportunity for community comment and turn it over to Dr. Young.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. So let's start with progress towards the goal of 100% of kids reading on or above grade level by the end of grade 3. Despite being virtual last year, we surpassed the 90% mark in 3rd grade. Where we saw students that were still struggling, largely were students that have learning disabilities that prevent them from cracking the reading code. And so when students have disabilities and they get specially designed instruction, there's any number of specialized programs that we provide instruction on. For students that are not identified as special education students, we enlist the support of our reading specialists to help them targeted instruction to make sure that we close any gaps in the learning to read process. The reason we chose 3rd grade, the research shows that it is exponentially more difficult to get kids on grade level if they're not on or above grade level by the end of grade 3. The tax increases I mentioned in the goals presentation, we've just started looking at our budget for next year, so there'll be much more information coming as we move through the next couple of months. We did have Keystones last year. We did have PSSAs. We We had AP testing, we also had PSAT and ACT, as well as SAT. So as has been our practice, probably in the November timeframe, and it's usually at the Education Committee, we will do a data presentation to update the community as to where we are. The curriculum review cycle, when Mr. Hoffman came in, we looked at where we were in terms of writing or rewriting curriculum by subject area. And so the updates that we get around the curriculum cycle really happen in our Education Committee meeting, because the board's role in curriculum is to approve the purchase of textbooks. So the actual curriculum by school code is delegated to the superintendent or designee, in this case, Mr. Hoffman. And that curriculum review looks at standards, it looks at performance data. Because we're able to pinpoint much more accurately now than we were 5, 10, 15 years ago where our strengths and weaknesses are, it actually makes it easier to write curriculum. And then, once the curriculum is written, look at what materials we're purchasing or implementing to make sure that we're delivering the curriculum well. So, we're in the second year of our implementation of Fountas and Pinnell Classroom. We felt that Fountas and Pinnell supports our reading curriculum. We're in year 2 or year 3 of using illustrative mathematics at the middle school and high school, because we felt that illustrative did a better job than Carnegie Math to deliver the curriculum. So all of those updates will come in our Education Committee. It does involve teachers. We even get input from students.
Thank you, Dr. Young, for answering this question. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, we're going to move on to announcements. I know Mr. Lefkin does not have any. Dr. Young, are there any additional?
There are no announcements.
We also have our minutes from our August 23rd legislative meeting. Is there a motion to accept those minutes? Mr. Sharada, is there a second? Second, Dr. Levinovich. Are there any questions on the motion? And seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you. Also included tonight, we have our committee meeting minutes. Those minutes from the Education Committee on June 2nd, the Finance Committee on August 18th, and the Policy Committee meeting on August 18th as well, were all approved by the committees and are here as an information item. Ms. Shapiro, can you please present the Education Committee curriculum recommendation?
Yes, sure. Item 8, as usual, is for information purposes only, and I think the noticeable item there is that we have 117 additional students this school year compared to last year. Right? Then items B and C were both discussed in the Education Committee, so I'd like to propose a motion to approve items 8B and C.
Is there a second to the motion? Second? I'm Nitty. Are there any questions to the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you, the motion carries. Mr. Sharada, can you please present the Finance Committee recommendation?
Yes, thank you. We have 7 items under finance tonight, all except item D, which is our regular monthly payment item, and item G were discussed at the Finance Committee. Item G was discussed in executive session. I'd like to make a motion to approve all 7 of these items.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I have a second.
Thank you. It's been moved and we have a second. Are there any questions on the motion? They are all discussed at the committee meeting. Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Personnel, Dr. Levine.
I'd like to make the motion to approve both items under personnel. Item A is the independent contractor agreement, and B is the personnel report.
Is there a second to that motion? Thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that motion carries. Mrs. Francis, Policy Committee recommendation.
Thank you. This evening we have our first item, which is approving the second reading of policies 112, 115, and 210 as discussed at our most recent policy committee meeting last week. I'd like to make a motion to approve those second readings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I'd like to take the next two items, B and C. We have a first reading affirmation for policies 117, 137, 138, and 200. And then item C is a second first reading, which we are going to affirm this evening for 006. So I'd like to make a motion to affirm those first and second first readings.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you again, Mr. Wallace. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Wallace, can you handle the other business?
I'm happy to. Thank you, Dr. Hayes. In a superintendent report, Dr. Gianni referenced the emergency instructional time template that PDE had asked us to submit, and that will be retroactive to the start of the school year. I make a motion to authorize the superintendent to submit the emergency instructional time template to PDE.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Francis, for the second. Are there any questions on that motion? Please, seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Also attached this evening, we have a number of liaison committee reports. Again, this is an information item with a lot of things going on in our community. Some of those aren't really up and running, but by now we should really be full steam ahead with everybody coming back to school. We thank those that have submitted, and we really want to make sure that we're attending those committee meetings and then following our report as well. Mr. Biagio, is there?
Ms. Davis, may I make a comment regarding the liaison report?
What was that?
I want to make a comment regarding the liaison report.
Absolutely.
Just a couple of items on the Eastern Center for Arts Technology liaison report is that just to bring your attention to the enrollment numbers. I added the historical enrollment in 2017, 2018, we're at 34. This year, as of 9/9, we're at 50. So a significant increase. I'd like to thank the administration, Dr. Perez, Ms. Black, superintendent, and the leadership team for continuing to work on promoting the great work that Eastern does. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. There's so many opportunities there, and we want to make sure that everyone is aware so that they can make that choice if indeed it's
Also, I just want to thank our administration. It's been very difficult to transportation for our Eastern students over the past week, and I'd like to thank all the efforts. And I think we've had excellent attendance from the W students at Eastern. So thank you all involved.
Thank you again. Mr. D'Anthony.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Davis. I have the executive session announcement for this evening. The board met in executive session for an hour prior to tonight's public meeting, and the topics of discussion were matters of personnel, which the board approved this evening. One matter related to school safety regarding replacement of the emergency notification system, and also to receive information on one confidential student matter.
Thank you. At this point, we're up to our second opportunity for community input. If you would like to speak, please come to the mic, state your name and where you reside in the township, and Ms. Evans will be our timekeeper for your 4 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, Jenny Vitella, Amber. Dr. Yanni, thank you for your goals and that detail. I look forward to actually seeing it, since I definitely couldn't see that far. I just wondering if we could get, I know there's some anxious athletes, football, water polo, swimmers, that would love to just understand the update. I know you've been so busy, and I think we've come this far, and 2.5 weeks is amazing. But just out of curiosity, what's the status of Cardinal Stadium and especially the pool? I know the pool obviously suffered significant damage, and I just was curious if we have any update on either of them. Again, I know it's not a priority. Also, the curriculum. Now, the last time I saw anything in terms of a curriculum kind of outlined out, I believe, was science, where it said first grade, we cover this, in this quarter, we do this, in this quarter, we do that, in that quarter. I'm just wondering, is that something like that available for every grade level, every topic, most classes? Like, it'd be nice to know what books we're using for chem, whatever, 10th grade chem, and kind of what they're going and what they're learning. And I don't know if that's in a section or in an area that we could consolidate that so people could kind of get a grip on what their children are learning, because I think it's very important to kind of get involved and understand. And also, I know we have our health and safety plan, and I know we have the numbers, blah, blah, blah. And I know that we went into severe, which limits volunteers to go in the building, and I forget what else. But my curiosity is, if we happen to dip down to moderate, do we pivot that quickly that week, we can have an event and volunteers can be in there? Or is there gonna be a delay and you have a school board meeting, or how is that gonna work if we happen to dip into moderate? Obviously, with the elementaries coming together, I imagine that that's not something we pivot quickly there. But just wondering about the other schools and when, maybe volunteers or coaches, or when are they allowed to kind of be in the building somewhat normally if we're in moderate? That's it, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? And seeing none, I once again am turn it over to Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. So, status of the pool and the stadium. The statement was made that it wasn't a priority, and I want to assure everyone that those items are a priority. They were not the first priority. First was getting classrooms up and running. By the end of this week, we should have a pretty good idea and be able to update on everyone where we are with Cardinal Stadium. The pool is going to take a little bit longer, but our daily updates will probably be going down to once or twice, 1 or 2 updates a week. But we will make sure that we update the status of both of those locations in the coming days. In terms of the curriculum, I'll discuss with Mr. Hoffman where all that information is located. We can discuss that at an upcoming Ed Committee meeting. And the health and safety plan, we will continue to share out the transmission information on Tuesdays. And part of that document will articulate if there are any changes to our health and safety plan.
And does that clearly indicate when volunteers would be able to come back in?
It does. We don't need a school board meeting. We have the ability to be flexible to work inside the confines of the health and safety plan. So, that information, I say it's on Tuesdays, they used to be really good by updating that site early on Tuesday. The last couple of weeks, I'm looking over it, Ms. Evans, it's been sometimes 5 or 6 o'clock at night. So if you don't get an email on a Tuesday, just assume you're going to get it on a Wednesday, or as soon as they update the site with the municipality specific information.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? I'd like to just share information regarding our upcoming meetings. We have an education committee meeting on Wednesday, October 6th at 6 o'clock. We have a policy committee meeting Wednesday, October 6th, following education committee or at 7:15 p.m. And then on Wednesday, October 20th, we have a finance committee meeting. And then our legislative meeting will be held Monday, October 25th at 7 p.m.
Dr. Davis, can I interject one? I got a text from Mr. Hoffman. The curriculum team is meeting this week to update the database of all of the instructional materials. So I would say within the next 2 weeks, all of that information will be available, but we'll reference it just as a quick point at the next ed committee.
Thinking education committee that'll end up being a focus. So be sure here we'll deal with that then. Okay, thank you everyone. Again, any other final comments from the board? From the superintendent? All right. It is 8:03. I want to thank everyone again for attending this evening's meeting. Continue to support one another, stay healthy, remain strong.